Tonight's shir is called Matan Torah as the model for the Gerus process. And what we're going to see, we're going to trace from the Gemara, is that the whole way that we know the process of conversion to Judaism is the process of the way that the Jewish people received the Torah. This was of great interest to us when we were studying the Daf Yomi in Croesus just a few weeks ago. And we came across this Gemara, and I made a mental note to myself that this would be something important to discuss before Shavuot, because Shavuot is when we all converted to Judaism. It's one of the reasons why we lay Megillas Rus on Shavuot, because we are all converts to Judaism. And this is what the holiday of Shavuot reminds us of. But what we're going to see in the Gemara is that the actual nitty-gritty of the conversion process is very much related. That according to Chazal, it's directly traceable to what the Jewish people had to undergo before being able to receive the Torah. And in addition to there being just an interesting discussion of the sources, we're also going to perhaps discover some important nafkaminas lahalacha based upon our understanding of what the Jewish people had to undergo vis-a-vis the conversion process. In other words, we may discover some chidushim as far as the halachas of Gerus, based upon our shir tonight. Our first stop is the Gemara in Croesus that really started this all. And this is on page 1. It's the Gemara in Croesus, Daf Tes, Amud Aleph. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Omer, Rabbi says, Kachem ka'avosechem. That the ger, according to the Torah, is just like you. And what Chazal interpret that to mean is ka'avosechem. When we say that they are just like you, they are just like your forefathers. Ma'avosechem lo nichnusu lebritz ela b'mila utfila v'hartza asdam. Just like your ancestors were only able to enter into the covenant of Torah, to become the Jewish people, through 3 steps. They needed to have bris milah, at least the males did. They needed to have tvila, immersion in a mikvah, and they needed to have hartza asdam. They needed to have blood sprinkled upon them, meaning that there had to be some sacrificial component of the conversion process. So avheim lo yikansu lebris ela b'mila utvila v'hartza asdamin. So too, anytime a Gentile wishes to convert to Judaism, they need the 3-step process of bris milah, of immersion in a mikvah, and hartza asdamin, of the sprinkling of blood, in order to fulfill a sacrificial requirement. Now this obviously is problematic, because we don't have karbanos today, so the Gemara is going to address this momentarily. We'll skip down to Omar Mar, which is a review. So the Gemara says, first of all, let's try and understand where we know these 3 steps. Where do we know these three steps from? Where do you see that the Jewish people had to undergo 3 steps in order to be able to receive the Torah? Bishlama Mila, I can understand bris milah, dichsiv, kimulim hayu kol ha'am hayotzeim. It says in Sefer Yehoshua that when the Jewish people had left Mitzrayim, they were all circumcised, meaning, and we know this from a number of different sources. This is just one of many sources in Chazal, that before the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, they all had bris milah, because when in Egypt they had, except for the tribe of Levi, they had let themselves go, so to speak, religiously, and no one performed bris milah. And when it came time to leave Mitzrayim, God said to the Jewish people that you're going to have to do 2 mitzvahs that involve dam. Dam bris and dam milah in order to be able to leave Mitzrayim. And inami mehachen, Chazal say this is also indicated in the pasuk in Yecheskel. Vo'e'evor alayich. Dam bris and dam pesach. Excuse me. Right. Sorry. Dam milah and dam pesach. Sorry. And then it says also, we see this as well in the pasuk in Yecheskel, Vo'e'evor alayich vo'e'ech misposeses b'domayich v'omer lach b'domayich chayi v'omer lach b'domayich chayi. God says, I passed over you when you were bare of mitzvahs, before you were ready to leave Mitzrayim. And all of a sudden, Hashem, I see that by your blood shall you live, by your blood shall you live. This is recited twice, b'domayich chayi, because there were 2 damim. There were 2 types of blood. Dam milah and dam pesach. Okay, so we know that bris milah was something that they needed to do. Now you and I could look at this and say, well, maybe they only needed to do bris milah as a prerequisite to bring korban pesach. No, Chazal say that this was a prerequisite to coming to Kabbalas HaTorah at Har Sinai as well. This was not only necessary to bring a korban, it was necessary as a component of the conversion process, which would culminate at Kabbalas HaTorah at Har Sinai. Okay? And then the Gemara says, Hartzah Asdomim, how do I know that they needed to have a korban? Dichsiv vayishlach es na'arei b'nei Yisrael. As it says in Shemos, Perek Chaf Daled. Now this is the end of Parshas Mishpatim. And it says, and you actually have this pasuk on page 2, it says, Vaya'alu alos vayizbechu zivachim shalomim lashem parim. And really you have to, it's in pasuk Hey in Shemos Perek Chaf Daled, that Moshe Rabbeinu sends forth the youths of Israel, and they offer burnt offerings, and zivachim and shlomim, all different kinds of karbanos. And then it says, Vayikach, in pasuk Vav, it says, Vayikach Moshe chatzi adam, Vayasem ba'aganot, v'chatzi adam zarak al hamizbeach. Moshe took all of the blood of the sacrifices, he put half of it on the altar that was constructed by Har Sinai, and then it says, in pasuk Ches, Vayikach Moshe et chatzi adam, vayizrok al ha'am. And Moshe took the other half of the blood, and he sprinkled it upon the people. And he says, behold, this is the blood of the covenant that God enters into you on this day. So you see that some sacrificial process is necessary as well, says the Gemara, in order to be able to convert to Judaism at Har Sinai. And then finally the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, Ela tvila minol, and how do you know that there was tvila? So it says, Vayikach Moshe chatzi adam vayizrok al amas. It says that Moshe took half the blood and he sprinkled it on the people. Ve'ein hazah below tvila. And you can never have sprinkling of blood upon the people unless they had first gone to the mikveh first. Now the Gemara is making basically like a kal v'chomer, that if there's going to be a sprinkling of blood, which is in itself a type of purification process, it has to be preceded by the more basic purification process of going to the mikveh. So the Gemara now asks the question, so now that we know that the Jewish people had to undergo three things, they had to undergo bris milah, karbanos, and tevila b'mikveh, what about bisman hazeh? We don't have karbanos, so how come we accept gerim bisman hazeh? Ela me'ata, ha'idin adeleka karban lo nekabel gerim. Nowadays that we don't have karbanos, we shouldn't be allowed to accept gerim. Amar Rabachar bar Yaakov v'chiyagur itechem ger asher v'sochechem v'goymer. Because the Torah says that when a ger lives together with you, who is in your midst, and the end of the pasuk says lidorosechem, that the law for the ger shall be for all of your generations. So we learn from that pasuk lidorosechem that for all generations there is the possibility of converts living among you, and as a result, that's how we know that even when there are no karbanos, it is possible for Gentiles to convert to Judaism. Do we understand? What the Gemara is essentially teaching me is that even though bringing a karban is an essential component of conversion to Judaism, but by virtue of the fact that the Torah allows for gerim in every single generation of Jews, must be that when we can't offer a karban, there's still the possibility of conversion. Good? Fine. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Brisa, ger bisman hazeh tzarich sheyafrish rov alekino. And what the Brisa then tells us is the ramifications of this halacha. That today, when a person converts to Judaism, he's obligated to set aside a certain amount of money in order to be able to purchase karbanos when the temple is rebuilt. Meaning that even though today you're a bona fide convert to Judaism, even though you haven't yet brought your karban, but you're going to have to make it up. You can't get into Judaism if the temple is standing without bringing karbanos. Amar Rav Shimon kvar nimna alav Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ubitla mipnei hatakola. However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai abolished that rule that you have to set aside money to purchase karbanos when you convert to Judaism. Why? Mipnei hatakola. What does the word takola mean? because of a stumbling block. What possible stumbling block is there?
The money's going to be a problem.
The money's going to be a problem. You'll put it in your drawer. 20 years later, you'll forget what that money was for, and you'll buy your wife a piece of jewelry with it. And as a result, you're going to be moil behektish. You'll be using stuff that is hektish and using it for personal use. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made a takana and said, no, even though when you convert, you're chayv to bring a korban when the temple is rebuilt, but don't put aside any money for it. And the Gemara concludes by saying, Amar Vidi bar Geshem, Amar Ravada bar Ahab, Halacha Rav Shimon. That's how we pasken. Okay. This concept that there are 3 steps in the Gerus process, and one of them, in the absence of karbanos, is not required, is echoed in a small one of the Masechtos Ketanos called Maseches Gerim, and it says very simply as follows: Kishem she Yisrael. By the way, Masechtos Ketanos in general were written in the Gaonic period. And my understanding is that they were primarily authored in Eretz Yisrael by the Palestinian community in Eretz Yisrael in the Gaonic period, sometime around the 6th or 7th centuries. So they are post-Talmudic to a certain degree, but they're as close as to our Talmud that you can get, so they're still considered to be Talmudic in their authority. And it says in Maseches Gerim, Kishem she Yisrael nichnasu labris b'shalosh mitzvos, just like the Jewish people entered into the covenant of becoming Jewish with 3 mitzvos, kach gerim nichnasim b'milu v'tfilu v'karban, so too a ger has to enter into the covenant with 3 different mitzvos, mila, tvila, and karban. And then it says, Shnayim ma'akvin ve'echad einu ma'akev. 2 of them, if you don't do them, the whole process is bust. It doesn't work. But 1 of them, in its absence, you're still a convert. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Afa Karban Ma'akev, he disagrees, and he says that the karban, in the absence of a karban, you're not a convert. Kachai Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Gershin Iskar Tzarech Lahakrish Revius L'Kino, and Rabbi Shimon Omer Eino Sarach. And that's where Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said that you have to set aside at least the money for your conversion, and you're not a full-fledged convert until you actually bring your karban. You get to do the mitzvahs, but there's something still lacking, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. This, of course, is a das yachid. We don't paskin this way, but it's interesting to note that there is such an opinion that in the absence of a karban, a person who converts to Judaism is only halfway or 2/3 of the way there. Okay? Now, for contrast, we're going to take a look at one other piece of Gemara, and then we're going to have some fun with it. Okay? So let's take a look at one more piece of Gemara. This is a Gemara in Yevamos. Daf Mem Vav, at the bottom of Amud Aleph, the top of Amud Beis, and we're just going to read the underlined sections. Tana Rabbanan. Bryson now says, Ger Shemol Velo Tava. If a ger, here the Gemara takes it for granted that there's only 2 steps in the conversion process, Mila and Tvila, Bris Mila and immersion in mikvah. So the Bryson says, what happens if you only did one of them? So the Brisa says, if you only did bris milah and you didn't go to mikvah, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Harei Zager, you're still a valid convert. Because we find that our ancestors, when it came time to accept the Torah, they only had bris milah, they didn't go to mikvah. That's pretty contradictory to what we learned in the Maseches Krisus, isn't it? So you see, did you note that immediately there's a stira in the Gemara?
This is not the same Rabbi Eliezer that we saw just above.
Correct. That was Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. This is Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus. Right. So far we've got a steer in Gemaras. We'll address that in just a moment. Rabbi Yoshua Omer Harei Zager. And Rabbi Yoshua says, Tav al v'lo mal, if a person only goes to mikvah and doesn't have a bris, and here we're talking even about a male, if he goes to mikvah but he doesn't have a bris, Rabbi Yeshua Omer Harei Zager, that he is a convert. Because we see that women, when it came time for them to receive the Torah, and there's a machlokus whether the imahus means Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, or does it mean the imahus, our ancestors who came to Har Sinai. But either way, the point is that he says, look, they had to go to mikveh. There must have been something that they did in order to convert to Judaism. They couldn't have bris milah. So they must have done something, so they must have gone to mikveh. And therefore, even a male who goes to mikveh but doesn't have a bris, it's a valid conversion. So this is the opinion of one of Rabbi Eliezer, the other one of Rabbi Yehoshua. And v'chachamim omrim, the chachamim say, Tova v'lo mol, mol v'lo tova, and ger achim v'yidvol. They say, sorry, you need both. You've got one without the other, doesn't work. You need both Mila and you need Tvila. And so the Gemara now says, Rabbi Yoshua nami neilaf mi avos, Rabbi Eliezer nami neilaf mi mos. The Gemara goes through a whole process of asking, why, according to Rabbi Yehoshua, are you only a ger if you had Tvila without Mila? And why, according to Rabbi Eliezer, are you a ger if you had Mila without Tefillah? Why don't they learn from each other? What's wrong with their respective arguments? We skip a few lines. Ella, the Gemara says, B'tava v'lo mal kuli alma lo pli demahani. Everyone agrees, both Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Eliezer both agree, that if a person goes to the mikveh and doesn't have a bris, then that's a sufficient conversion to Judaism. Even if you don't have a bris, as long as you go to the mikveh for the sake of conversion, you're a convert. Because you learn that from the imahos, you learn that from the women. Ki pligi v'bol v'lo taval. The machlokus is, what if you have a bris and you don't go to mikveh? Right? Rabbi Eliezer Yolif Mei Avos. Rabbi Eliezer says, listen, we find that our ancestors, when they received the Torah, all they had was a bris before leaving Mitzrayim, and that was sufficient. And Rabbi Yoshua v'avos nami tefillah hava. And Rabbi Yeshua says, what are you talking about? When our ancestors came to receive the Torah at Har Sinai, they also went to mikveh. Now we're hearing a reverberation of the Gemara in Krisus, right? So now the Gemara says, Minole, how do you know that when we came to Har Sinai we had to go to mikveh first? Now what was the pasuk that we saw before? Anyone remember what pasuk we saw in Krisus? What pasuk did we see in Maseches Krisus to tell me that they had to go to mikveh? From the sprinkling of the dam in Parshas Mishpatim, in Shmos Perek Chaf Dalet. Okay? So comes along the Gemara and says, Ila mimidichsiv leichel ha'am v'kidashtam hayom u'machar v'chibesusim losam. So maybe I'll tell you, says the Gemara, it's from Parshas Yisro. Because it says in Parshas Yisro, before they hear the Ten Commandments, we're going to read this on Shavuot, this Torah reading, it says, go to the nation, sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them launder their garments. Meaning they have to put their garments in a mikveh. So the Gemara says, Uma b'makom shein ton kibus ton tefillah, makom sheton kibus eno din sheton tefillah. So this is a raya that they have to go to mikveh, because if you have to take your clothes to a mikveh, surely you got to take yourself to a mikveh. That's what the Gemara wants to argue. It's a good argument, no? So this is the source text for them having to go to mikveh. But the Gemara says, no, v'dilma nikiyos ba'alma. But no, wait a minute. Maybe the only reason they have to wash their clothes is because just like you wash your clothes before Shabbos to have nice big day Shabbos, if you're going to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, you should look nice. But that's not proof that they have to go to mikveh. So the Gemara's conclusion is, Ela mehacha. Rather learn it out from here. Vayikach Moshe es hadam vayizrok al ha'am. Now we go back to our pasuk in Krisus. That Moshe in Perek Chaf Dalet and Parshas Mishpatim, Moshe takes the blood from the karbanos and sprinkles it on the people. Ugemiri dein hazah below tefillah. And we have a tradition that there's no sprinkling unless you first go to mikveh. Okay, that's enough. We don't have to see any more. Well, the last line is okay. You can take a look at that yourselves. It would seem from here that both the Gemara in Yevamos and the Gemara in Krisus both learn the source for going to mikveh is from Shemos Chaf Dalet, that if Moshe Rabbeinu sprinkled blood upon them, they had to have first gone to mikveh in order to be able to have blood sprinkled upon them. Okay, now you'll see in just a moment that this is quite relevant, even though you might seem that this is minutia. We have a Mechilta. The Mechilta is a halachic midrash on Sefer Shemos. And the Mechilta actually learns differently. The Mechilta says, "V'chibesusim losam," they shall launder their clothes. This is the Mechilta on Parshas Yisro, and it says, "Uminayin sheyitanu tefillah." How do you know that the Jewish people had to go to mikveh? Areini dan ma'im b'makom shein tunin kibus begadim tunin tefillah kan shuton kibus begadim eno din shuton tefillah. Because ein kibud begadim b'Torah she'eno ta'on tefillah. Where does the Mechilta learn it from, that they had to go to mikveh? It learns it from the Havamin of the Gemara in Yevamos. The Gemara in Yevamos had said, maybe that's the talk of the source text for how I know that they went to the mikveh. The Mechilta says, you're right, that is the source text. You know how I know that they went to mikveh? Because it says in Parshas Yisro, before hearing the Ten Commandments, that they had to launder their clothes. And if you had to launder their clothes, then surely you had to go to mikveh as well. The Gemara in Yevamos, however, rejects that source text. The Gemara in Yevamos says that doesn't indicate anything. Maybe they just have to be clean in order to receive the Torah. Good. We've seen all of our Talmudic texts. Now let's have some fun with the Rambam. Take a look at the Rambam in Hilchos Yisurei Bia Perek Yud Gimel, and the Rambam goes in his first 5 halachos. He paskins the halachos of what it takes to convert to Judaism. And he states as follows in Halacha Aleph, Bishlosha Dvarim Nichnusi Yisrael Lebris, B'milo, Tefillah, V'Karban. There are 3 ways, 3 steps that the Jewish people had to go through in order to enter into the covenant of Israel, and they are Mila, Bris Mila, Tefillah, and Karban. Halacha Beis, Mila Haisa B'Mitzrayim. They had a Bris Mila in Egypt, Shenamar, as it says in the Pasuk, B'chol Arei Lo Yochal Bo. Because the Torah says that no uncircumcised male may partake of the Paschal offering. Mol osa Moshe Rabbeinu shekulam bitlu bris mila b'mitzrayim chutz mishevet Levi v'al zenemar brischa yinsoru. Moshe therefore had to circumcise all the Jews before they left Egypt, except for the tribe of Levi, as the Torah says that only Levi, out of all the other shvatim, observed the covenant of bris mila. Halacha Gimel. Utvila haisa b'midbar kodem Matan Torah. They went to the mikvah before they received the Torah in the midbar. Shenemar v'kidashtam hayom u'machar v'chibesusim losam. As it says, they will launder their clothing. Where's that pasuk from? Yisro. Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. What's the problem here? Gemara Yevamos and the Gemara in Krisus. So the Rambam has done is he's rejected 2 Gemaras. He's rejected a Gemara in Krisus, rejected a Gemara in Yevamos, and has chosen to paskin like the Mechilta. This is what we would call a Shver Rambam. Right? This is a difficult Rambam. It's a difficult Rambam because if the Gemara in 2 separate places tells you that the source text for a certain halacha is X, and the Rambam resorts to a medrash to tell you what the source of a halacha is, the Rambam is saying, Dir Shuni, you got to understand what I'm talking about. There's something here, we got to figure it out. Okay?
Sometimes the Rambam posek like the Yerushalmi, maybe there is a Yerushalmi that...
Alright, you'll have to see if you can find the Yerushalmi. But even when the Rambam paskins like the Yerushalmi, it's got to be. Still, it's got to say Dirshun. You have to understand why. Why would he reject the Bavli? We normally don't reject the Bavli over the Yerushalmi. And the Korban. And how do you know that they had to bring a Korban? Shneimar vayishlach es narei b'nei Yisrael vayalu olos, like they call Israel ikrivim, that the youths who offered the Korbanos at Har Sinai did it on behalf of the entire Jewish people. Halacha Dalet, says the Rambam. V'chein. Lidoros k'shiyirtza ha'akum lehikanes lebrisu lehistof evtachas kanfei hashchina. Any time a Gentile wishes to enter into the covenant and place himself under the wings of the divine presence, which in itself is a beautiful metaphor, the kabbalah of old Torah, he must accept upon himself the yoke of Torah. Tzarich milu tefillah v'hartzoas karban. He needs to have bris milah, he needs to go to mikvah, and he needs to have the sacrificial process performed. And if she's a female, all she needs is tefillah and a mikvah, and she needs a karban. And how do I know this? Because it says that you and the ger are exactly alike. Ma atem b'milu tefillah v'hartzoas karban, apager ledoros b'milu tefillah v'hartzoas karban. Just like back then, you have to go through those 3 steps. Any ger has to go through those exact same 3 steps. Halacha hey. Umahu karban hager olas behemo shnei torah shnei bnei yona ushneim ola. The carbon of a ger is a carbon ola, and that the Gemara derives in Krisus. It's interesting, isn't it? Because in the times of Matan Torah, you had to sprinkle the blood on the ger. Even the Gemara in Krisus understands that there's no obligation to sprinkle the blood on the ger, and the reason is because once the Torah was given, the carbon ola requires all of its blood to be placed on the mizbeach. You don't have the liberty anymore to place some of the blood on any other surface other than the mizbeach itself. In any event, that's a side point. U'izman hazeh she'ein sham carbon tzarich milu tefillah l'cheshivona beis hamikdash yavi carbon. concludes the Rambam as we would have expected him, that nowadays, in the absence of a temple, you need Mila and Tefillah, and when the temple is rebuilt, the Ger shall bring a korban.
So that doesn't mean, though, that we should set the money aside.
No, he's not saying that you have to set the money aside. We've already established from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that you don't do that. Now,
this requirement continues the Dor Doris?
This requirement continues Ladore Doris. An interesting shaila that we're not going to discuss tonight, an interesting thought question which has halakhic ramifications, not Bisman Hazeh, is in the times of the temple, what if a person converting to Judaism only does Mila and Tefillah and doesn't bring a korban? Is he a ger or is he not a ger? In other words, in temple times, is the korban ma'akev or is it not ma'akev? Is it only Bisman Hazeh that the korban is not ma'akev? Or is it even in temple times that the korban is not ma'akev? That's a discussion that the Rishonim have. That we'll put that to the side. Take a look at the Bach. Bach in Yoredeya Siman Reish Samaches. He asks the following question on the Rambam: V'ika litmoa, Amasha Kosav HaRambam Reish Perik Yud Gimel Mehilchas Yisurei Biyav Hasmag B'Lavin Kuf Yud Vav. And the Smag says the same thing as the Rambam. They quote the wrong pasuk. They're quoting the pasuk in Parshas Yisro that was rejected by the Gemara in Yevamos. Okay? It's the Bach's question. Take a look on your own time at the Bach's answer. I think that the Bach's answer is a dachuk. However, it's a viable teretz, so if you're happy with it, you can leave. But you'll take a look at the Bach's answer and you'll let me know what you think. But that's the kasha of the evening, and that's what we're going to be building upon. How could the Rambam quote the wrong pasuk if the Gemara said that that's not the source text for how we know that they went to mikvah? Take a look. We already saw the psukim in Shmos Perek Chaf Daled. Now here's something very important. Shmos Perek Chaf Daled is at the end of Parshas Mishpatim. When did the Jewish people receive the Torah? Parshas Yisro. So how can we be bringing a text from Shmos Perek Chaf Daled to tell us what the Jewish people did before Kabbalas Torah? It's a Pashat Akasha, right? I mean, you must have heard this question before. If any time you've gone through Parshas Mishpatim and you've read Perek Chaf Daled and Parshas Mishpatim, what is Parshas Mishpatim talking about? If they've already received the Torah, where did the words Nasav and Ishma come from? Parshas Mishpatim. When did they say Nasav and Ishma? Before Kabbalas Torah or after Kabbalas Torah? Well, according to Chazal, they said it before Kabbalas Torah. That was sort of like the signing of the contract, right? Nasav and Ishma. We will do and we will hear. And that's when Hashem said, okay, I'll give you the Torah. You know, Kaf Aleim Har Kigigas, the Gemara and Shabbos, all of that stuff, right? So we know that Shmos Perek Chaf Daled, even though it's written after the Ten Commandments, what do we say? Ein what? Ein Muktam U'Muchar B'Torah. And that's how we know that even though it's written here, it really is before the Ten Commandments. Take a look at Rashi, the famous Rashi in Perek Chaf Daled, Ve'el Moshe Amar Alei, Parshas U'Nemar Koydem Aseres Hadibros, Uva'arba B'Sivan Nehemor Lo Alei. Pashat, right? Pashat. The only problem is it's not Pashat. Take a look at the Ramban al HaTorah. And you see, now here, this is a fascinating exercise, just as an aside. You have here drush, right? You look at a Rashi, a Machlokas Rashi and the Ramban, by the way, the Ramban and the Ibn Ezra together, and you say to yourself, okay, the Machlokas is whether we can say a Muktam U'Muchar B'Torah when there's no other compelling argument, right? Interesting Machlokas Rashi and Ramban. Is there any halachic nafkamina in this? So you see, you just got to scratch the surface a little bit. You need to discover that a machlokas between Rashi and the Ramban al Torah actually is going to lead us down a path that is going to have earth-shattering repercussions in the entire conversion process. So what does the Ramban say? The Ramban says, after he first quotes Rashi, he says, "Ve'ein haparshios ba'os kesidron v'lo kemishmon klal." The problem is, says the Ramban, according to Rashi, it turns out that there's no sequence whatsoever to the ordering of the Torah. And he's bothered by that. He says, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu write the Torah that way? You're telling me first, you look at it's in Shmos Perek Yud Test, tell me how they prepared for Kabbalas Torah. And then in Shmos Perek Chaf we hear the Aseres HaDibros, and then we go through all of the Mishpatim in Parshas Mishpatim, and at the end, oh, by the way, this is an addendum to fill in the blanks of what happened in Shmos Perek Yud Tes. That doesn't make sense. So, and the Ramban says, Ki einenu nachon sheyeh al mishpatim shenitztavu b'nei Noach v'shenamru lahem b'mara shekvar shamu v'yadu osam. He says, it doesn't make sense to suggest that all of the mishpatim that are appearing in the beginning of Parshas Mishpatim were given to the Jewish people before Kabbalas HaTorah. So how do we make sense of this whole, it seems to be totally out of sequence. Ukvar heitiv liros Rabbi Avraham shapirish ha'inyan kasidra. Take a look at Ibn Ezra, says the Ramban. He doesn't have a problem to explain it sequentially, that indeed the Jewish people already received the Torah at Har Sinai in Shmos Perek Yud Tes. And after hearing the Ten Commandments and after saying that we will accept the entire Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu comes down, teaches them the Mishpatim, and then this is the addendum. This is what they do, not going back in time, but this is a second procedure. And like the Ramban says, he says, V'hinei Moshe Kasav, I'm just reading the underlined section, V'hinei Moshe Kasav Bayom Hahu B'Sefer Kol Ma Shenitztaveh, that on that day, when Moshe gave them the Aseres HaDibros, he wrote down in a book all that he had been commanded, Chukim u'Mishpatim v'Toros, all the different kinds of mitzvos, V'hishkim Baboker Mimacharas Hayom Hahu, Lichros Lahem Beris Al HaKol, and then Moshe got up the next day to enact a certain additional covenant, meaning that they received the Torah, but it needed to be contractualized. It needed to have some kind of covenant which involved a protocol, which involved a procedure. In other words, there was Kabbalas HaTorah, there was certainly Matan Torah, the Jewish people received the Torah, they heard the Ten Commandments, and then the next day, after Shavuot, Moshe Rabbeinu comes down and teaches them certain halachos and says, now Rabbi Sai, we have to go through a formal bris, a formal covenant, to make sure that you're committed to this. So this is all after Kabbalas HaTorah, according to the Ramban, and according to the Ibn Ezra. And that's when the sprinkling of the blood takes place, and all of these karbanos are brought, and like the Ramban says, Kizos os habris lavo hashnayim b'chalakim shavim. He says the establishment of a covenant there has to be a quid pro quo. If God's going to give us something, we have to give something back, and that's what's meant by the offering of karbanos in Shmos Perek Chaf Daled. So the offering of karbanos is after Kabbalas HaTorah, and whatever tefillah b'mikvah is taking place in Shmos Perek Chaf Daled is taking place after Kabbalas HaTorah. Now, where are we going with all of this? Huh? Who's already figured out? Who's figured out the clues? Who does the Rambam subscribe to? The Rambam holds like the Ramban. That's exactly what is, and it's going to answer several different kashas. So there's a beautiful tshuva from Dayan Weiss Zichrono Livracha in his Minchas Yitzchak Chelek Yud Siman Kuf Nun Beis, who suggests precisely that. And he suggests that the whole reason why the Rambam quotes the wrong pasuk is because he's holding like the Ramban. Yeah.
Isn't that more of a question on the Ramban? How can you hold that if the Gemara seems to reject? You turn the question either way.
You could ask a question on the Ramban. So the Ramban himself, if you take note, the Ramban himself says, I have basis in Chazal. I notice that in the Mechilta, it's a machlokes tanoim as to whether the events in Shmos Chaf Daled took place before Kabbalas HaTorah or after Kabbalas HaTorah. And I, who am engaged in the exercise of Torah Parshanut, reserve the right to subscribe to one of the opinions in the Mechilta. It's a good question. So after Dayan Weiss asks all the questions that we asked on the Rambam, why the Rambam quotes the wrong pasuk as the source text for going to mikvah, he asks another question, which is in the third paragraph. He says, "Otzarch bir divrei HaRambam sham." He says, "V'hinei b'maseches krisus parach ela me'ata ha'idna deleka korban lo nekabel gerim." The Gemara in Krisus that we started off the evening with asks the question, what right do we have to convert converts today if we can't bring them a korban? Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov b'chi yaguritchem ger l'doroseichem. So the Gemara had answered because it says that the convert shall live with you in all generations. So therefore that's an indication that there's the possibility of conversion even in the absence of a temple. Upirish Rashi afagav deleka mikdashayin sham b'nei harambam sham edi kol amikros shameim yofin and kol halachas anal. He says my difficulty with the Rambam is also the fact that the Rambam omitted something quite relevant. In all of the other steps of conversion, if you go through those first 5 halachas again in Hilchos Isurei Bia, you'll note that the Rambam every step of the way quotes a pasuk the same way that the Gemara does to tell me how I know that the ger needs milah, how do I know that the ger needs tevilah, and how do I know that the ger needs a korban, and how do I know that bisman hazeh the ger does not need a korban? That part, the Rambam omits the source text in the Torah to indicate that in the absence of a temple, the ger is patur from bringing a korban. Why would the Rambam omit that vital piece of information? He says, V'sosam v'lo pirei shatam, he says in the fourth line. There, the Rambam who says that the korban is not ma'akev, it's not vital if there's no temple, he doesn't give you the source text. Isn't that very curious? Why would the Rambam not provide a source text if for every other step of the way, for the protocol of the ger, he provides you the Talmudic source text for how I know that a ger is supposed to go through milah, the ger is supposed to go through tefillah, the ger is supposed to go through a korban. And bisman hazeh, the korban's not ma'akev. No source text. Why is that? He says, I don't understand. So these are the two questions that Dayan Weiss asks. So mikoach this, Dayan Weiss answers as follows. He says that the Rambam holds like the Ramban, that the whole protocol in Shmos Chav Dalet goes like the Ramban, who says that it was after Kabbalah Satorah. And therefore that really answers not only our first question, but it answers the second question that Dayan Weiss asked as well. It explains why the Rambam chooses the text from the Mechilta and not the text from the Gemara in Krisus and Yevamos, because the Gemara in Krisus and Yevamos is talking about, if you hold that the Parshios are Kisidron, that they're supposed to be read according in chronological order, then the Karbanos, then the Tefillah that they had is all after Kabbalah Satorah. And therefore it's got nothing to do with a criterion for conversion. Secondly, it also answers the question why the Rambam doesn't bring a source text for how I know that the korban is not ma'akev. Because Dayan Weiss says brilliantly as follows. He says, you only need a source text to tell me that bisman hazeh, the korban is not ma'akev, if you hold that they brought a korban before they were megayer. If they brought a korban before they were megayer, so then we have to figure out why then is there no requirement for a korban bisman hazeh. But if the korban that's brought in Perek Chav Dalet is not brought before they're megayer, but is brought after Kabbalah Satorah, then there's no requirement for a korban in order to convert to Judaism. So the Rambam learns that there is a requirement, essentially there is some kind of requirement, however, in the absence, but it's more Torah Shabbal Peh, and in the absence of a korban, in the absence of a temple, since there's no clear source text to require a korban in the first place, where you're off the hook. So he says, where does he say this? I think it's on the top of page 4. He says, Uvazeh asi shapir, and with this it works out very well. The davka hashasam dismir leidak korban ayukoda matan Torah canal. That only according to the Gemara in Krisus, who says that the korban was brought before Matan Torah, Shapir hayahav amina de korban ma'akev. Would I have thought that there's a problem with the korban? Therefore, you need a pasuk to tell me that it's not ma'akev. Masha Enkein HaRambam Dazel B'Kishita DeHaKorban HaYachar Matan Torah. But if you hold that the korban in Perek Chaf Daled was brought after they received the Torah, Memela Ein Tzarich Kra Deinu Ma'akev Dim Haya Ma'akev Hayu Tzrichim LaHaKorban Kodem Matan Torah D'Nichnasu LeBris Yisrael. But the Rambam L'Shitaso holds that Ein Tzarich Kra Lazeh. The Memela Mashma Kein B'Diktuk L'Shono Ba'asi HaKol Shaper Be'ezras Hashem Yisborach. So, therefore, since the Rambam doesn't even have a source text that they brought karbanos before Matan Torah, for whatever reason that Chazal require a ger to bring a korban, it's not something that's ma'akev, because there's no source text to even tell me that they brought a korban in the first place before Matan Torah. Yeah.
So why does the Rambam bring the source text of bringing korbanos after Matan Torah as a condition to be a ger? Right?
So you're going, if you look at the korban shenemar vayishlach es narei b'nei Yisrael vayalu alos al yedei kol Yisrael hikrivu. You're asking an excellent kasha. The only problem with Dayan Weiss's whole Torah is that in Halacha Gimel, where it says that in temple times you need to bring a korban, he quotes the pasuk in Perek Chaf Daled. It's not so glatt, Rabbi Son. It's not so glatt. But I guess Dayan Weiss would have to tell you as follows. He would tell you that it's true that korban was brought after Kabbalas HaTorah, but because there was some level of covenant that they entered into even after receiving the Torah, therefore it behooves the ger to bring a korban to complete the process of conversion, right? To make some kind of covenantal commitment other than circumcision and immersion in a mikveh. Right, but it's not of the same level of requirement as Mila and Tvila because it was done after the formal Matan Torah of the Ten Commandments. I would argue that that's how he would say it. Okay? That's an excellent question.
According to that argument, wasn't Tvila also after?
Oh, no, because Tvila was v'chibesusim losam, let them launder their clothes. And if they had to launder their clothes, then surely they had to go to mikveh. That's the source text that the Mechilta brings for how they had to go to mikveh, because that's in Shmos Perek Yud Tes. That's not what the Gemara brings in Krisus and Yevamos, but it's what the Mechilta brings. So now we understand why the Rambam is being somech on the Mechilta before he's being somech on the Talmud Bavli. Yes?
Rabbi Yoshua, he was the one that said you could be considered a ger if you just fight when you didn't do Mila?
Rabbi Yehoshua is of the opinion that if you just go to mikveh and without a bris milah...
So is the reason he's basing it on is because he kind of figures that they didn't do Mila before they left Mitzrayim?
I think he's arguing that it's based upon the fact that if a woman could be Magayer without having a bris, so then a man can be the Eved also. That's his argument. Okay. Now, so far we have not seen any halachic nafkamina, whether you hold like the Rashi or the Ramban and the Rambam according to Dayan Weiss. Everyone still agrees that bisman hazeh you can convert to Judaism and you don't need to bring a korban. Is there a possibility that there's some kind of halachic nafkamina to all of this? So I found something amazing. There's a sefer that was published sometime I think in the 40s or 50s called Nezer HaKodesh. And it's a Perush on Maseches Krisus. It was written by a Rav named Harav Moshe Rosen, who was a Rav for many years, first in Europe, and then he came to Brooklyn and was a Rav for many years in Brooklyn. He was apparently very close with the Chazon Ish. They had started a yeshiva project together. He's buried in Queens. I looked online and I saw his matzeva today in Queens. But apparently he was a very, very chashuv Rav, a huge Talmud Chacham, and he wrote the Sefer Nezer HaKodesh on Maseches Krisus. And he asks the same questions as Dayan Weiss. And I want you to take a look at the conclusion that he gives. The first paragraph is his kasha on the Rambam, why the Rambam is quoting the pasuk from the Mechilta of washing their clothes to prove that they went to mikvah, and not using the pasuk from the Gemara's in Krisus and Yevamos, that if they had blood sprinkled upon them, then surely they must have gone to mikvah. And he says a very lumdish teretz. And his teretz is, V'nira desavar harambam, it would seem to me, he says, that the Rambam has to contend with Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. Now, we had three opinions in the Gemara in Yevamos. We had Rabbi Eliezer, who says that if you have bris milah without mikvah, it's kosher. We had Rabbi Yoshua, who says if you have mikvah without bris milah, it's kosher. And we had the Chachamim, who say that you need to have both in order for it to be a kosher or gerus. So the question now that he asks is that if both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua say, they all agree that if you just have mikvah, it's kosher, because that's what the Gemara finally relented, both according to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua. If you have mikvah, alone, then you're a convert. So he says that there's a fundamental difference between the type of tevilah that you need, according to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua, and the type of tevilah b'mikvah that you need according to the Chachamim. And he writes this, he says, it's on the bottom 4 lines of that first column. He says, "V'hainu de Rabbi Yehoshua de savar de sagi b'tefila l'chudei, pshita de ba'inan tefila mamish kemo hatefila shahaisa b'imohus b'midbar." He says, if you hold like Rabbi Yehoshua that tefila b'mikvah alone is sufficient, then it's clear that you need a real tefila b'mikvah. What does it mean by a real tefila b'mikvah? It means to be l'shem mitzvahs gerus. When you go to the mikvah, you're going for the sake of converting through the mikvah. V'hainu tefila l'shem gerus. Amnam hatefila she'amru chachamim habo acharei hamila. But when the chachamim say that you need both bris milah and tefila, according to the chachamim, if a guy has already had his bris, because he's going through the conversion process, and then he goes to mikvah, that tefillah b'mikvah is an entirely different level of requirement. Bazelo ba'inan l'shem gerus mamish. He says there you don't need it to be l'shem gerus. Ella sagi imba hatefillah l'divrei Torah. It's long as you want to be a Jew because you're doing something you're doing something of a religious content, then that in itself is sufficient in order for the tefillah b'mikvah to be a tefillah. Kemo shahaisa b'midbar shetavlu Yisrael l'kabel es haTorah. V'zen nilmad mehad dichsiv lechel ha'am v'kidashtam hayom u'machar v'chibesusim losam. He says that's what the pasuk in Perek Yud Tes is referring to. When God told the Jewish people, wash your clothes and get clean for Kabbalah Torah, that was not a halachic conversion, according to Rav Rosen. In other words, what God was telling the Jewish people is, you're about to receive the Torah, I want you to get clean. I want you to clean your clothes, I want you to go to mikvah, not for the purpose of Gerus, but because you're about to receive the Torah. You got to be ready for a religious experience, a spiritual experience. You got to get yourself in water. The yesh kal v'chomer ma b'makom she'ein ton kibus begadim ton tefila makom she'ton kibus begadim and it's din ton tefila. V'chamos shirotza shas lomer ken aliba de Rabbi Yehoshua she'olach mizeh she'ton tefila. So the Gemara says, but maybe that was only for nikiyus ba'alma. Maybe that was only for cleanliness. So he explains, what does cleanliness means? It means nikiyus l'kabel Torah kamo tefillas bal keri. He says that according to the Rambam, you want to know why the Rambam quoted the pasuk in Yisro instead of the pasuk in Mishpatim? Because the pasuk in Mishpatim is necessary according to Rabbi Yehoshua when that's the only procedure that you are doing to convert to Judaism. But the Rambam argues and he says that according to the Chachamim, the tefillah b'mikvah that a ger has to undergo once he's already had his bris milah does not have to be l'shem tefillah l'shem gerus. It could be tefillah for the sake of the fact that he's a bal keri, or because he wants to immerse himself, because he wants to study Torah in a state of kedusha. So it comes out that according to Rav Rosen, there's a very important nafkamina lahalacha, according as to why the Rambam didn't quote the pasuk in Mishpatim, and he instead quoted the pasuk in Yisro. He's quoting the pasuk in Yisro to tell me that the nature of the tefillah b'mikvah does not have to be l'shem mitzvahs gerus. It can be l'shem nikiyus. It can be for the sake of being clean so that I can be spiritual and receive Torah. And that's why he brings a raya, beautiful in Os Dalet. He says, "Uvazeh yubuar lenavon hadiisa biyavamos daf memvav hahuda havakari le bar arma." There was a man that was part of the Jewish community where there were rumors about him that he was not of the proper pedigree. People said, you know what? We think he's a bar arma. We think that maybe his mother did not have a kosher conversion. And you know what Reish Lakish said? So Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Milo Tava Likiryo Yehuyan Sham. He says, what are you hocking the guy at China? Do you think he ever went to mikveh before Yom Kippur? Do you think he ever went to mikveh because he was a Balkari? They said, sure, we saw him in the mikveh the other day. Well, then what difference does it make? So even if he wasn't Jewish, if he went to mikveh once in his life, he's a Jew now. Because as long as he comports himself as a Jew, and he commits himself to halacha, and he goes to mikveh, even though it wasn't l'shem gerus, that's a valid tvila l'shem gerus according to the Rambam. And he quotes from the Rambam. He says, "V'chein kosav haRambam b'perek Yud Gimel misurei bia halacha tes v'chein ger shenoig b'darcha Yisrael shetovu l'kiri v'os kol hamitzvos are elu b'cheskas gerei tzedek." It's meduyak in the Rambam, like Rav Rosen says. I have to tell you something. This has very practical nafkaminas lahalacha. B'didi havamaisa. I once had a situation where I was a Rav in another community, and there was a fellow who told me that he was a Ger Tzedek, and he was a very committed guy, really, really committed, very sincere, very ideological, very idealistic. And he told me this, Rabbi, I had my conversion in front of the following Beis Din in a city where I knew that at one point there probably were no Orthodox rabbis. And he said, but it was done with a Beis Din, and the rabbi himself was a Shomer Shabbos, but it's unclear whether the Beis Din was a kosher Beis Din or not. So the question is, does he have to be Magayer all over again? Does he have to go through Bris Milah again? Does he have to go through Tefillah b'Mikvah? No, his wife is Jewish. His wife is Jewish.
Okay, you're right.
So that was not the Shaila. Shaila is, what is his personal status? So I spoke to my Rosh Yeshiva of blessed memory, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, Zecher Tzadik HaKadosh L'Bracha, and he quoted me the Rambam. And he says, look, the guy acts like a Fruma Yid. He goes to mikveh Erev Yom Kippur at least. So all you need to do, he says, just take him to your mikveh and tell him to dunk in front of you. You don't need a Beis Din. Doesn't need to be l'shem gerus. Because he's lived his life as a Jew, and he's committed to Torah, so then even though he went to mikveh without l'shem gerus, without a duly constituted Beis Din, he is, having lived his life as a Jew, he has a halachic status as a Jew, and it's because, obviously you can't be somech on this lechatchila. No one's suggesting that this would be lechatchila how we would allow gerus, because we require aliba dehilcha, so we require a Beis Din to be present at the time of tefillah as well. However, in a situation like this, where there was already the possibility that maybe it was a duly constituted Beis Din, maybe it wasn't, we're not sure, then as a chumrah, to make sure that he goes to mikveh again, just watch him go to the mikveh once, even without a Beis Din, and that's fine.
Yeah, but
so he told me he had a toughest on bris. He told me who the moil was, and I was satisfied. By the way, whether or not you need a Beis Din at the time of hatafas dam bris is in itself a machlokas in the achronim, and you can certainly be somech, at least according to certain days, on a b'diavad situation that you don't need Beis Din at the time of hatafas dam bris. We always say lechatchila you should have it, but in this case the Rosh Yeshiva was satisfied that even if it wasn't a duly constituted Beis Din, maybe it was, on that side it was, and since we're machmir to require it only when we know for sure there wasn't a halachic Beis Din, he felt that this was okay. Yes?
But this wouldn't apply to a woman.
It wouldn't apply?
Because
oh, very good. I see what you're saying, because since there was no commitment through the Bris Milah beforehand, so you want to say that there's going to be a nafkamina between men and women vis-a-vis this halacha. Very good, excellent. I don't know, possibly you're right, or perhaps if a woman has already lived her life halachically as a Jew, maybe the Rambam would agree. I don't know. It's an excellent question. I didn't research that, but it's worthwhile doing the research on that issue. Okay, yeah.
So then, two things. Number one, obviously the bracha that you make by Gerus is not me'akiv, right?
Right.
Okay.
Correct. The bracha is never ma'akiv in this.
Okay. But the second thing is then theoretically somebody converted with a Reformed or Conservative Judaism and then they firmed out.
That's a separate issue. That's a different issue, because there you have to be choshesh that there was never proper Kabbalah Sol mitzvahs. You see, in a situation where a person converted through a rabbi who miseducated the individual, and taught him that the scope of commandments is X, when in Orthodox Judaism the scope of commandments is Y, then there's no step of that conversion that was done properly, because the Jew has a distorted or incomplete understanding of what his halachic requirements are, and as a result you can't say that he's been living his life as a Jew based upon that process. He has to go through the whole process all over again.
What was this fellow's education?
He was educated within an Orthodox community. This rabbi was himself a Shomer Shabbos rabbi, but the question was, maybe he was not so meticulous in obtaining Shomer Shabbos to other guys as far as constituting his basement. Yeah.
Korobkin dealt with a similar situation, which I'm sure you've seen.
I don't remember.
After the Holocaust, after the Second World War, a number of men came from Europe with their wives, and I don't think there wasn't just one situation, and they lived very religious lives in the United States. And Korobkin tells us of one particular man that came to him and told him that his wife was never converted, she was never Jewish. And they had children, and the children were learning yeshivas, and the question is, what do you do with the children?
Right. Ramosha had a similar case as well. Yeah, right. It's a famous Maisa, and he answers similar. He says, listen, if she went to mikveh for the sake of Taras HaMishpacha, that in itself is a duly constituted.
And he asks about the children. The children is the bris milah of the children enough to make? In other words, one of the boys was in yeshiva. Somebody was arguing he shouldn't be able to learn Torah because he wasn't Jewish. They want to take him out of the yeshiva, so he argued that he was Jewish.
Yeah. All right, good. Yes.
The question about for a woman to have a tefillah, so we're speaking about this here.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, you just have to look a little bit further in the Nezer HaKodesh. Yeah. Two last things, and then I'll let you go. Just a little interesting piece of modern Jewish history. There is a correspondence between Rav Avraham Yitzchak Kook and Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, the Baal Sridei Eish, about a very serious question. And this tshuva is written in two places. The tshuva is written both in the tshuvas of Rav Kook and Das Kohen, and it's also written in the Sridei Eish. Interesting, the tshuvas are almost identical. But the tshuva in the Das Kohen is written as a response to Rav Yechiel Yaakov's shaila to Rav Kook. So the shaila is presented to him as follows. He says, Al derech nachri, this is on page 4. It's in, just for the tape, it's in Yoneh Yoredeya and Shalos Tshuvas Das Kohen, Siman Kuf Nun. Al daiti nachri, or al devar nachri sharotza liyisgayer. A goy wants to convert to Judaism. V'harofim omrim shahamila hisakana lo mipnei machlaso. And the doctors say that he's got hemophilia. And so he can't have a bris. If he has a bris, you're going to kill him in the process of the conversion. But he wants to be Megayer. So the shaila is, im efshar sheikanis l'kedushas Yisrael below mila. Can he just go to mikvah? Because look, ones rachmana patre, if a guy can't have a bris, he's pater from bris. So can you argue that because he's pater,
he can't be considered like a woman?
So maybe he's considered like a woman, right? So he can't, just like a woman can't have a bris, but maybe he can't have a bris either. Ki im b'tefillah v'kabolas mitzvahs. So Rav Kook says as follows. He says, Lanias daiti ein lasos mizeh safek. He says you should not do this. You should not create any doubts about this issue. Ki ein l'sha'er godol hamacha shelah she'teitzei mizeh. He says there is a great corruptive force that will come as a result of allowing this, of permitting this. Even if you could argue that al pi halacha it's permitted, as a matter of public policy it's the wrong thing to do. All you need is a doctor's letter. Can you imagine how many people want to convert if they just get a doctor's letter? You don't need a circumcision, or that you can't have a circumcision. You get a line of guys who say, I want to marry the nice Jewish girl, but my doctor said I have a certain condition, I can't have a bris. Makes life a lot easier, right? He says, Ki halo ba'avanosenu harabim mikilin b'kabolas gerim b'shvil ishus. He says nowadays there are so many people where they want to get married, and the man is not Jewish, and the rabbis are lenient, and they say, well, we can't stop in in the way of love, so we'll look the other way. We'll let the guy be makabel ol mitzvahs, even though he's doing it for ulterior motives. We'll let him be magayer. He says, he says, sometimes you don't have koyach anymore. You made your machal once, you made your protest, you said, come on, you can't do this. How much worse it would be if we find a heter for them to have a conversion without a bris. And therefore he says, Al Kenani Omer Al Zej Yishtaka Hadavar Velo Ye'omer. And therefore I say, no, even if we could even argue that you could find a heter, my lips are sealed. Loose lips, sink ships. I'm not going to give a heter at all. I'm not giving a heter for this at all, because we're going to sink our ship if we allow this kind of thing. V'lichora, and then he says in the second paragraph, Yesh lahavi raya mikushias hashas b'krisus test ates ela me'ata ha'idna deleka carbon lo nekabel gerim. I want to bring a shtickle raya, he says, from the Gemara in Krisus. He says, remember, the Gemara asks the question, nowadays, what right do we have to accept gerim if we can't bring a carbon? He says, Aduhutzrach Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov lidrosh miladoros eichem denohik bisman hazeh. And we brought a pasuk that says, yes, we have a pasuk to tell you that even bisman hazeh you can be magayer without a carbon. The teipuk dahavi ha'idna davar she'efsher. What do you need a pasuk for? If you can't bring a carbon, then anytime you can't do a certain component of a mitzvah, ones rachmana patre. So why don't you just say, even without a pasuk, if you cannot physically bring a carbon, a guy can be megayer just with mila and tefillah and fartik. That's all you need. Why do you need a source text in the Torah to permit gerus if you cannot physically bring a carbon bisman hazeh? Nahon? It's a good raya, no? So he therefore says, Elavadei pashut lahu de b'chol davar ha'ma'akev b'gerut ein chiluk bein efshar le'i efshar. He says, but that's a raya that when it comes to the conversion process, there's no distinction made between whether it's possible or impossible. Even something that's physically impossible because the guy's a hemophiliac, I'm sorry, we apologize to you, we'd love to accept you, but if you can't have the bris because you don't have clotting factor in your blood, we're sorry, we're going to have to turn you away. Because without a pasuk permitting someone to be Megayer without a korban, if there was no pasuk in the Torah that says L'dorosechem, we wouldn't be able to accept you as a ger, Bisman Hazeh, even though it's impossible to bring a korban. We would close shop. So this is a raya, says Rav Kook, and he writes this to the Baal Sridei Eish, to Rav Weinberg, and Rav Weinberg writes the exact same tshuva in the Sridei Eish, and I have that in the footnote. Last thing I'll just tell you, and then we'll stop. This is very quick. We won't have time to go through it. There was a great rabbi, Rav Perlo, in the early part of the 20th century. He wrote a commentary to the Rav Saadia Gaon Sefer HaMitzvahs, and he's commenting on the mitzvah of Tcheles Bisman Hazeh. And perhaps this is a forerunner to a future shiur where we'll talk about the mitzvah of Tcheles Bisman Hazeh. He says that according to Reb Yehuda Hanasi in the Gemara, the mitzvah of Tcheles and the mitzvah of the Lavan, the mitzvah, you need to have both Lavan and Tcheles in your tzitzis. You need to have both white strings and blue strings in your Tcheles in order for it to be a kosher pair of tzitzis. And the Rav Saadia Gaon writes, B'chenafecha tzitzis netzach. He writes very cryptically, Rav Saadia Gaon. He says there have to be tzitzis on the corners of your garment permanently or forever. Netzach, forever. So Rav Perlo is concerned, what does this mean, netzach? What does it mean permanently? And he says, because I could have argued that in the absence of the availability of tcheles, a person would be patur from the mitzvah of tzitzis in Gansa. So how do you know that there's a chiyuv of tzitzis even in the absence of tcheles? There you go. What does it say in the third parsha of Kriyas Shema? Harold, what does it say? No, what does it say? Open up the siddur. What does it say in the...
Is he referring to the fact that the Chaylet has to be permanent forever?
No, he's saying that even in the absence of Tcheles, the mitzvah of tzitzis is L'dorosam. I'm sorry, we should all know the pasuk by heart. Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'amarta lehem v'yasu lahem tzitzis al kanfei vigdeihem L'dorosam. L'dorosam, it's the same word, L'dorosechem. to tell me that even though Bizman Hazeh, we don't have Karbonos, we can still be Magayer people. Also, too, Bizman Hazeh, even though we don't have Tcheles, we can still have the Dorosam, we still have the mitzvah of Tzitzis, even in the absence of Tcheles. Without that word L'Dorosam, at least according to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi in the Gemara, there would be no mitzvah of Tzitzis Bichlal. And that will help us feed into a future share about whether or not we have an obligation to put Tcheles on our big day Tzitzis, Bizman Hazeh.